Guru. I am a farmer's agent located at 11707 Ricerstown Road in Ricerstown, Maryland. Here, you can call me at 443-660-7131 or listen to my show every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. on WOLB. Hello, welcome to the Insurance Guru Show, where we talk about all things insurance. My name is Ramona Jones McClain, and I'm a farmer's agent at 6 Hanover Road, Ricerstown, Maryland. You can call me anytime at 443-660-7131.
You're live in 3, 2, 1, whenever you're ready.
Hello, DMV. This is Ramona Jones McClain, and we're coming to you live from Ricerstown, Maryland, here on the Insurance Guru Show, where we talk about all things insurance. And can you believe it? My office phone is ringing loud everywhere. I'm so sorry. I did not turn it off. How about that? Let's get that turned down. Well, that's how it is when you're doing business. The phone rings and rings and rings, and that's how we want it, because we want to talk to you. Speaking of that, if you want to call into the show, and if you want to make comments or ask questions, you can call into 410. What is it, Taylor? 481
410-481-1010.
I don't know why I always forget it. It's not complicated. It's like the call sign of the show. 410-481-1010. You can also text the office at 443-660-7131. Or you can drop us an email at rjminsurance@gmail.com. So today we are entering, as of yesterday, Women's History Month. And all this month, we're going to be talking about powerful women in history and their estate and what happened when they passed away. And the day Aretha Franklin passed, we were on the air and we talked about her passing, and we talked about what happened and what was going on with her. We spoke about her again last year, about a year and a half later, as the issues with her estate began to unfold. What's an estate? An estate is the things that you obtained while you were on earth that's left behind to people after you leave this earth. That's your estate. And some people may think, well, I don't own anything. Well, usually you own something, even if it's just the money in your bank account or custody of your children. That is an estate. And these things just don't simply get resolved just because you're not here. You don't have to worry about them anymore, but somebody has got to worry. Isn't that right? Today I have with me attorney Mr. Nicholas McDaniels. Please give us your information, Mr. McDaniels.
Hi, Ms. Ramona. It's really good to see you. Thanks for having me back again. I feel like it's probably been a year or so since I've been on the air with you, and the first time being able to see your face kind of via the Zoom call during this, I do really enjoy that. As you said, my name is Nicholas McDaniels. I'm an attorney. Our primary office is located in Frederick, Maryland. We have a large footprint in Baltimore City as well. I am easy to reach in a couple of ways. The number one is by calling our phone and talking to one of our fine people in our office. That's 301-818-0405. And particularly for you, as you know, but also for your listeners, happy to give out my cell so you can ring me directly. That's 443-340-7323. And you can, of course, find us on the internet at www.lewismcdaniels.com. LEWISMCDANIELS. And maybe I'm not fitting up the part, but I am grateful to be on here at the early stages of Women's History Month, because Lord knows I would not be where I am today without the benefit of the hard work and care and love and dedication of so many strong and powerful women in my family.
Absolutely, including your wonderful and beautiful wife. Absolutely. Let's give a shout out to the wives.
Hey, look, yeah, she has to put up with a whole lot all the time. I hope I at least give a little bit back in return. But yeah, absolutely. My wife and my mother, and I am a girl dad as well. So,
Oh, wow. You're in trouble.
Not women's history, but talking about women's futures too, right?
Yeah, so we were talking about Aretha Franklin, and the last we left off with her, this was a year ago actually. Yep. They had found 3 handwritten wills in her house. 2 of them were found under the cushions in her couch. Okay, yep. 1 they found locked away in some cabinet. All of them said, this is despite the fact that all of her attorneys had said that they had tried to get her to do a will and she wouldn't do it. Now.
Yeah, it created obviously lots of problems, and because she was such an icon throughout the world, the entire kind of estate drama played out at the highest levels of the news as well. But yeah, she was kind of a child of a different era, back when sometimes you would hide the cash under the mattress and everything else.
And speaking of that, they did find, it was like $80,000 in stuff under mattresses throughout the house.
Yep. No, unsurprising. And that estate, since we last talked, fortunately they've been able to resolve a lot of issues. I think it's still kind of hanging in the air when we last spoke about this, related to tax debts and all sorts of things.
Right.
It was, I think $7 million in IRS taxes that her sons were pretty much left to deal with. And I think that's part of what we want to talk about today a little bit too, is, maybe leaving stuff under your cushions obviously is not best practice, but also, even if you are going to write it down and have your attorneys prepare everything, making sure that that's being done in a way that doesn't leave your children feeling kind of holding the bag, so to speak.
Well, later on in the show, we're going to have a guest on, one of my, the family member of one of my former policyholders, who is going through an experience herself, like right now, where her father had a will, her father had life insurance, and I guess he followed all of those instructions, but of course nobody knows where it is.
That's a huge issue, right? Just the very basic safekeeping of those important documents is a huge issue for people. We at my office, our customary practice and what we recommend to all of our clients is to record your will with the Register of Wills at the jurisdiction where you're living. And then what we typically do is then, maintain the receipt, make sure that you're provided with a receipt, but also send a receipt of that to important people in your family who would be named in the will, so that they then know, okay, this is where this document is. So
speaking of important people, one of the things, the contingency points of confusion in Aretha's situation is that those individuals that could have been deemed important changed over decades. And so she's got one will where she is advocating for one person, and then in the second will she's saying, oh, this person did me dirty, I don't want them anywhere near my stuff, this person should be in charge, this, that, and the other. And then in the third will, that person is no longer. And let's talk about, how do you identify who should be responsible and in charge? What criteria? What can you use?
Yeah, no, that is, typically in most families, and the clients that I work with are like me, regular folks. We may have a little bit of something and something that needs to be taken care of, but we're not dealing with millions of dollars. Or I promise you that I look every night. There's not $80 under my mattress, but we we look for a couple of things. I mean, one, usually you want it to be first and foremost somebody that you trust to carry out your wishes, right? And that seems like an easy thing to say, but figuring out who you trust is different than figuring out who loves you. I mean, chances are all of these people are people who love you and love you dearly. They're often your children or your siblings, and people who you know care deeply about you. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the most trustworthy people in the world. So you're looking for somebody with good organizational skills, somebody that has at least some financial knowledge. But even more importantly than that, I look for people who are local, people who can actually have feet on the ground, and be able to deal with things like the selling of a car or the selling of a house. Also look for people who I think have the time or the capacity to be able to deal with stuff, because you may have a daughter who is an accountant or an attorney, but that person may be so busy that their actual ability to kind of take over some of the affairs of your estate, because it's essentially what you're doing, right? I mean, you pass away. I mean, I like to tell people and tell students that I teach that an estate is like the legal fictional version of you that continues to live until everything gets wrapped up and tied up. And you imagine just taking over one of your loved one's life at the drop of a hat. I mean, that takes a ton of time. I mean, the very basics of making sure that the BG&E bill gets paid. I mean, those sorts of things are really important. So finding somebody that is one, close in proximity. I hardly ever recommend having an out-of-state. In Maryland, we call them personal representatives. If you read stories in the news in other states, they're sometimes called executors or executrixes if it's a female. But in Maryland, we call them personal representatives. So finding that person that is actually going to be able to be present is, I think, of the utmost importance.
Are there companies or individuals that provide that service for a fee?
Yeah, absolutely. And in Maryland, the way that it's set up, the personal representative is entitled to a statutory fee for that work, because it is work. I mean, I am the personal representative of an estate now, and sometimes when people either don't have somebody they trust or maybe just don't have anybody, they want their attorney to be that person. Sometimes if they anticipate there'll be conflicts amongst their heirs, they want an attorney to be that person. And so, but regardless, even if you were just handling, and I'm sure many of your listeners have, if not handled one of these situations themselves, at least been associated with one, they understand kind of what that takes. The state law provides for a fee for that person for the work that they do, and that fee is it's 9% of the first $20,000 of the value of the estate, so that's $1,800, and then it's 3.6% after that, right? So every $3,600 for every $100,000 worth of value of the estate after that first $20,000. So.
Okay. So it's something that not only should you evaluate that you should put someone in place that you trust, but someone who is familiar enough with the process that can go through it and understand. And you brought up the BG&E bill. You have to have access to funds to cover the BG&E bill, which means that part of the process is allowing someone to know where the money is and to be able to access it, to have your password, because you could just go log in on bgne.com and they have your payment information saved and just get in and pay the BG&E bill. And why is that important? Because if there is a property and it's February and it's snowing, you don't want the water or the electricity get turned off, and next thing you know, you're dealing with a homeowner's claim because the pipes burst because you didn't pay the BG&E bill, and the homeowner's insurance company doesn't want to pay the claim because the transfer of assets is not clear. We're looking for the homeowner, and the homeowner isn't here, and now we have to wait to determine who's taking possession of the property when literally all you had to do was pay the $300 BG&E bill.
Yeah, and that's a real burden. I mean, if you don't have access to that money or those accounts, I mean, a lot of times family members are paying out of pocket, and the personal representatives often, when there's it's a complicated estate or it's messy and they don't have the time to do it, usually they'll hire an attorney to manage that. My firm does that estate administration work and we charge the statutory fee. I mean, we charge that same fee that the personal representative would get. That way it's, pretty clear and they're not, charging us per hour. But I'm dealing with a situation right now where that was the very case when somebody passed away right at the beginning of winter time, and sorting through all of those things like passwords, bank accounts. I mean, and this is this particular person passed away right at the beginning or right at the end of November, and I'm still finding stuff.
I'm sure.
I found a life insurance policy last week. It was a small one, but it was one that it wasn't all in one place, and that can be, it's overwhelming, it's time consuming, and I like to, with my clients, is talk through, okay, let's get all this stuff in one place. And I try to keep that information on file. I ask all of my estate planning clients if they want to provide it for me. I mean, who's your banker? Who's your accountant?
Right.
Who's your doctor? Who's your dentist? All of these things. And that way, if somebody passes away, I can be helpful, right? I might get a phone call from a son that says, hey, mom just passed, you wrote the will, we're handling everything, but do you know if she had a safe deposit box, or do you know? And unfortunately, I'll be able to have that on file and say, yeah, she did at, what used to be First National Bank, but now it's probably M&T or something like that, and can walk people through the process in that way. But that requires a lot of coaching, and I'm sure you do that too. I mean, everybody should have a safe in the house. Everybody should, and make copies of things that the people you care about, so they have them ahead of time.
Well, back in the day, believe it or not, I've been in insurance for a little bit, and back in the day, when a person got life insurance, and if they had a will, the agent that I worked with a while ago, she would keep a copy of the life insurance and a copy of the will in the office. And because we had the car insurance or the homeowner's insurance, usually if someone passed away, one of the first calls was made to us and said, hey, we're trying to figure out if they had life insurance. Did they have it? And, she would say, yeah, the life insurance is here, but I also have a copy of the will. And
you hire professionals, right? Like accountants and attorneys and doctors and dentists and insurance agents who are going to be those people who are going to step in these situations. And I'm not saying they have to have sit-down meetings, but they should all kind of have the same information. That any one of those people can be equally as helpful.
Exactly.
And people in your role are oftentimes on the front lines and involved before somebody in my role is in those situations. So.
And I think it's important too, because especially in the African American community, we don't like to talk about death. We think it's taboo. If I talk about it, it's gonna happen. But I got a secret for you. You do realize it's gonna happen anyway. You can't avoid it.
And taxes, and that's the only two guarantees in life.
It's coming. You can hold it off for a long time. I've got a relative. She is 98 years old, and this woman insisting she gonna live in her house by herself. She's coming. She failed, and they found her. Actually, she called them. She reached the phone and called them. She's coming out of the rehab center. And she was like, no, I got to go home. You're 98 years old. You can't go home by yourself. I realize you've been doing this for almost a century. I get it. But now, at some point in our lives, we turn into children again. We have to be taken care of. Just like we took care of the children. Right.
You hired people to help you with those things. And that is a time better than any to really put your trust in those people to be able to help you with your continued care as you age, whether that's aging in place or if that's, moving to, becoming an assisted living arrangement or even further down the line. making sure that those people are all involved in communicating with one another.
Yeah, but you have to have the conversation. Number one, we talk about life insurance all the time. We talk about it in detail. Number two, you have to actually think about what you want to do and put it on paper. That's creating your will. Then once these things are in place, you need to choose someone who is going to execute your wishes. And we talked about the things that you go through, that somebody you trust, somebody who has the time and the ability to handle it, someone who has knowledge enough to understand what needs to take place. And we're gonna talk about what needs to take place, and then somebody who understands what you want. Those are the criteria in which you choose the person who will execute your final wishes. But you must choose someone. You cannot just have these things over to the side and not tell anybody. Okay? And in your mind, I get it. Everybody knows, well, my important papers are in that drawer right there. Everybody doesn't know because they're living their life. They may have heard you say that 10 years ago, but that was 10 years ago. Unfortunately, in Aretha Franklin situation, her important papers were under the couch, under the cushion on the couch. and it has caused all kind of turmoil. Not to mention that she did owe $7.8 million in taxes, which they finally came to an arrangement last month. Her family's estate is going to pay $800,000 up front, and then 40% of the profits from the income that comes from her estate going forward. The settlement also allowed $50,000 apiece to be released to her sons because, as you know, she had a special needs son who is in immediate need of financial support because he can't work for himself. And he has to be taken care of as he's in a group or assisted living home. In addition to that, they're still trying to determine who's supposed to get what and who's supposed to be in charge. The court finally appointed an attorney who is actually the head of the Bar Association, I believe, in the state of Michigan, to be the executive of her estate because the cousin that originally agreed to step up, understanding, originally thinking that was her wishes, had stepped up under the conditions that she would only stay there if there was no infighting. And the moment the oldest son, I believe his name is Clarence, started it, he got upset with the movie Respect and thought that it should not go forward after the cousin signed off on it to release those funds into the estate. And she probably did it because the estate needed immediate funds to try to kind of pay off some of these things that were happening and to get money to the special needs child. But without the will, and they're still trying to determine which will is valid. One of the wills was written, actually two of them were written. One was written in June of 2014 and the other was written in June of 2010 and October of 2010. And then the last one, which was found underneath the cushions of the sofa, which you would think would be the one that they're using, but not necessarily, was found in 2014. And in the will, she talks about special provisions in order for her children to get anything that they deem is due to them. Yes, and there are many variations, including who should be the executor of her estate and who should carry out what her final wishes were. It's also been estimated, and this is a pretty good estimate, that her estate is worth $80 million.
That sounds fair, right? It's one of those things that with the royalties and everything else, and just kind of her name, image, and likeness, which will, carry on for centuries.
Yes.
Right. That sounds fair. You put any huge number on it, and I appreciate my guess. That sounds reasonable. Yeah. It's a massive estate. But the thing that is important to remember is if that's all tied up, like you're suggesting, there are still immediate needs, right? And that BG bill for you and I may be a couple $100s.
Right.
My guess is, Miss Aretha's BG or Michigan gas and electric bill is probably significantly higher.
Yes.
And not exactly a 1,500 square foot home. I don't think she was living in. So,
no.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. I mean, having a child with special needs, that is of a significant importance, right?
Yep.
Because those needs can't get put on hold, right? And those need to be provided for. And I'm fortunate to be a trustee of a life insurance trust. I'm sure you've underwritten many policies that are kind of designed to fund a trust to care for somebody like that. And I'm fortunate to be in that situation to care for somebody that when his mother does eventually pass on, those provisions immediately kick into place. As soon as the life insurance policy funds the trust, then we can hopefully, with maybe only a week's gap, not miss a beat in the continued care for. I want to say young man. I mean, at this point,
yes,
young
it
man
is. Yes,
my age or older, he's a grown man.
Yes, he is.
Needs continued.
Right, but not just that. Who does the custody of this gentleman?
Right.
Who does custody go to?
And I meet annually with the accountant, with the caregiver, with the some of the siblings, and that's something that is, again, I understand not everybody has time for that or the resources, but that's making sure that we have that continuity so that everything doesn't kind of grind to a halt and then somebody is left trying to restart the engine.
Right, exactly. Well, listen, we're going to take a break right now for station identification. When we come back, we have a guest with us, Miss Marietta Pinckney, who's going to talk about her specific situation where recently her father passed away. Thank you so much. If you want to give us a call, 410-481-1010.
WOLB Baltimore and WERQ FM HD3 Baltimore, celebrating Radio 1's 42nd anniversary.
Our Radio 1 family, our employees, their family members, our listeners, our viewers, for extended family.
And serving the African American community for over 42 years. The views and opinions of the guests and hosts you hear are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers. As the road you travel changes, so can your insurance needs. Talking with Farmers Insurance agent Ramona Jones McClain can help you assess whether you're ready for the journey ahead. Call Farmers agent Ramona Jones McClain today at 443-660-7131. That's Ramona Jones McClain at 443-660-7131.
We are farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
Hello, DMV. This is Ramona Jones McClain, your insurance guru. I am a farmer's agent located at 11707 Ricerstown Road in Ricerstown, Maryland. Here, you can call me at 443-660-7131 or listen to my show every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. on WOLB.
All right.
We're going back live in 3, 2, 1, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you so much. This is Ramona Jones McClain, insurance guru, and today we are talking about you have your will, you have your life insurance. What comes next? We have a guest with us, Miss Marietta Pinckney, who I was speaking with the other day, who recently lost her father. And Miss Pinckney, tell us about your situation. Miss Pinckney, we can hear you. Hi, Miss Pinckney. Miss Pinckney, we can hear you. There we go. Go right ahead, Miss Pinckney. Okay. So, Miss Pinckney recently lost her father, and she called the office because his insurance is in my office. And Miss Pinckney, tell us about your situation, whatever you're willing to divulge. Okay. We insure other products with for her father, and recently found she called the office to tell us about his passing. Yes, Miss Pinckney.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Tell us about your current situation with your dad.
Okay, my current situation is the fact that my father passed in December, and we've been trying to locate whether or not he had a will available or anything that pertaining to his death that he left for us as far as information. And at this present time, we're still going through, the court system and everything, trying to get all his belongings and all his possessions and everything taken care of, but we having quite a bit of problem. And so I was wondering, first of all, where can we actually start to even do anything in reference to his will and insurance policies and everything that we need?
Well, with regards to insurance, if there is an insurance policy in place, and Taylor, I may need you to look this up. There is a number with the state of Maryland that you can call. It's a number that if money is left sitting somewhere, that you can call to find out if there was an active insurance policy. Taylor's going to look that up, and she's going to get you that
Okay.
number.
Oh,
But what about the rest of it, Mr. McDaniels?
I got to admit, some of the audio cut out on me there a little bit, and that's probably on my end. I'm sorry, Mr. Ramona, if you don't mind just giving me a recap.
Okay, so she says that that's okay. She says that she they're in a situation where they're trying to find his will. They know it was one. What can she do, or where does she even start to determine if and where the will is?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and one that if things are done right, like we said, you should be able to call a number of people, right? You should be able to, the good insurance agent may have that on hand. Oftentimes, medical providers have those on hand. I do know lots of physicians that are making that part of their regular practice, where they are trying to maintain those important documents on behalf of their patients.
So if he was in the hospital, they may have asked for a copy of the will.
Yeah, it's often, something they do. The hospital social workers and the patient advocates and those sorts of professionals working in hospital settings often ask for those things, especially if it's kind of an end of life or a terminal situation or even a hospice situation. They would normally have those things on file. If you know that your loved one has had an attorney or an accountant, oftentimes they will have those on file. And then I think probably the final place to check, other than just going through file cabinets, a safe, those sorts of things in the house, is with the Register of Wills and the place where they lived. So if they lived in Baltimore City or Baltimore County, the Register of Wills in those jurisdictions would be able to tell you whether they have a will on file for that person for safekeeping, pretty much as long as you have that person's kind of full name, address, and social security number. They're able to let you know whether there is a will there.
Right. Did you hear that, Miss Pinckney?
yes, I did, and that was quite a bit of good information.
There
At
is.
least it's a starting-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I say at least it's a starting point.
Her family is also in a situation where some of the siblings have started to acquire the assets, despite her, because Miss Pinckney here was actually, she is aware that her father wanted her as the oldest child to be in charge of the estate. But other siblings have started to grab things and retitle vehicles already in their name, despite the fact of her knowledge that this vehicle was supposed to go to another sibling.
Yes, and I mean that shouldn't happen unless an estate has been opened, and tag and title places aren't really supposed to do that unless they have the proper documentation, have what's called letters of administration. That's pretty much what allows somebody who's administering the estate to kind of sign titles over to people. But there are lots of people that'll find creative ways to get that done without the appropriate documentation. And that leaves, somebody like Miss Pinckney kind of scrambling to try to stop all of this from happening, while at the same time eventually trying to claw some of that back if it was distributed inappropriately. So, I mean, that's the best way, in my experience, to do that is to try to open an estate as though the person did not have a will. Right, so you go to the Register of Wills, and the Register of Wills and the clerks of the Orphans Court, who handle estate disputes in different jurisdictions in Maryland, are some of the most helpful, caring clerks in our entire state, and are excellent in helping people walk through this process during a very difficult time. But you can open an estate for a person who doesn't have a will, and then if a will is recovered later, then you can change that from what's called an intestate. That's a person that doesn't have a will. They don't have a last will intestate. And change that to a testate process. That is somebody who does have a will. But that would give somebody the power, as appointed by the court, to handle all of these situations. So I would certainly recommend that in Miss Pinckney's case, or anyone else who's dealing with a similar situation.
What can she do to stop? Or, I mean, I know that part she can go ahead and open an estate to stop. But what can she do to recover those assets that have been dispersed?
Yeah, so I mean, the estate would then, or the personal representative of the estate. So, Ms. Pinckney, if you were to be appointed the personal representative and be granted your letters of administration, you would have the power to sue people. You would have the power to go through government agencies to recover property that was especially titled property, like an automobile
or a house.
A house, anything that was improperly titled. I mean, you could essentially, it's theft, right? And so you would have all of the same powers as if somebody stole those things from you to go get those back on behalf of the estate. So that if it is stuff of high value, I mean, if a house has been retitled, that should almost never happen, because usually those documents typically have to be recorded or at least viewed by the land records. But crazy things happen, especially in this post-COVID time when, I mean, it's just documentation is not as great as it was before, and it's starting to get back to normal. But things, they've become a Wild West for a little while, and it's trying to get that back on track.
Absolutely. I think that I think Miss Pinckney, her situation, the house has not been retitled, but she does not have possession of it.
Yeah.
So someone else is taking possession. The vehicles have been retitled. And from the insurance standpoint, I'm over here saying, oh my gosh, because we're still insuring these items, and the person who has possession of it, first of all, it's still under the original name. They haven't contacted us. And so there's some serious insurable interest here with respect to who owns what, because if there is a claim, if their property is damaged, if they do damage to someone else, the insurance policy is going to kick in place. And then the question becomes, who is actually liable, or who do we issue the money to? Because it's going to issue to the named insured, not to the person that has inevitably possess the item.
No, exactly. I mean, it creates a major mess if something like that were to happen. And I obviously never recommend anybody access the criminal justice system unless they're forced to. But I mean, essentially what we're dealing with here is theft, and that is a vehicle that has been stolen from the estate. At this point, if somebody else is driving it around, that's very, very, very problematic. And again, like I said, you don't necessarily want to call the police on your brother or something like that, but that's a real threat and something that should be a very serious conversation between those members of the family.
And Miss Pinckney, tell them what I told you, that they need to call me, right?
Yes, they do. I was told that, to tell them to call you. So I have relayed the messages, and whether they have done so as of yet, I don't know.
And basically my comment was, I'm not here to put you in jail or get you in trouble, but this wasn't done the right way. You were trying to go through the back door. Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead. Yes,
I was listening to you.
Yeah, you were trying to go through the back door to get what you wanted to get, but you've created a bigger problem than was absolutely necessary. And this goes back to what the show is all about. You know that you are preparing to no longer be here. All of us will eventually. You must get your house in order. You got life insurance. You had a will prepared. You have to go to the next step. You have to say who's going to be in charge. You have to say who's going to get what. You have to have open and honest conversations with your family and your friends, and say, hey, I don't want you to have this truck. I'm sorry, but you can't have it. This truck needs to go here. And to me, when you do that, when you have the open and upfront conversations, when you designate who's going to be in charge, when you tell people where the will is and where the life insurance is, and I get it, you don't want to tell them how much, but somebody's got to know. Don't you agree, Mr. McDaniels?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the worst thing in an estate situation are surprises, and that's kind of your work and what you do, and my work and what I do is try to eliminate as many of those as possible, the unsures, and because that's Miss Pinckney, that's what you're dealing with. There's a lot of confusion about exactly what is supposed to be going on, and people are taking advantage of that confusion, are kind of being allowed to operate under the radar, and that's really unfortunate, and hopefully you can get a handle on it pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Pinckney, for being on today and sharing your story. I hope you were able to get some information. And in any way we can continue to assist you, you can always give Mr. Nick McDaniels a phone call at 301-818-0105, or you can visit him at Louis McDaniels, McDaniels.com. I think that, yes, ma'am.
What was the number again?
301-818-0105. I'm sorry, 0405. 301-818-0405. We have a caller we want to bring on. Who's the caller?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, ma'am. Can I have your name?
My name's Pam.
Hi, Pam. What do you want to say?
I just wanted to express the situation that happened to my mom died, and my sister was appointed the PR by the judge after she stole out of my dad's estate. What can we do? Because she cashed in life insurance that was supposed to go into the state. She collected rent. It did not go into the estate. She kept the money and used it for her personal use.
Yeah, I'm very very sorry to hear about the passing, and even more sorry to hear about somebody kind of taking advantage of that situation. Really, I mean, our courts are set up to handle that process, but it's through the litigation process. I mean, it's through essentially filing what's called a caveat to the estate. You can seek to have the personal representative removed. Those things are it's time consuming, and it is challenging, but I would certainly recommend that in this case, because the personal representative has a duty above all else to the estate. They have what's called a fiduciary duty, so they can't be self-serving at all. And it sounds like that's exactly what this person has done as the personal representative. And so you would either want to file a caveat against the estate, or you can really essentially sue the estate and seek the removal of the personal representative, and then the court would require the personal representative to then produce all of that information, all of that financial information, and the court would then see that impropriety.
And see, the reason why is Judge Garrett will not hold them responsible. And the lawyer that he went and appointed is doing the same thing that my sister did. She hasn't paid any bills at all, and a personal representative is supposed to pay the bill. So it's like it's a catch-23. I've put in an appeal to have her removed. I had my sister removed, but it's like they're in cahoots together.
Oh, so the sister had been removed, but an attorney was appointed, and you're seeing the same kind of thing. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah.
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 I mean,
and when I go to the judge says, "Oh, we're not going to remove her." I said, "But it's not fair for me and my other sister, it's three of us, to pay the attorney out of our share when she doesn't even want to talk to us. She only talks. Miss Johnson only talks to one person. And that's the one that stole out of the state. And every time you ask her, like my mother is on this earth for 80 years. Where's her wedding ring? Where is her diamonds? Where is her purse? Oh, well, I didn't see it when I went there. But it was, I mean, you got pictures of her having it. Where is it? Someone had to take it. Me and my other sister have no keys to the house. They changed the lock.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously you know this, so I'm saying something that's very obvious to you because you're living it, but I mean, that's not what is supposed to happen. If the personal representative and or the attorney who's representing the estate or administering the estate at this point is not dealing fairly, then they have liability. You can potentially bring a lawsuit against them individually, not just against the estate for that.
So bring a lawsuit against the attorney because she's supposed to be biased and she's supposed to talk to everybody instead of one person, especially the one that has sticky fingers.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you're saying is correct in the way that it is supposed to work out. So I definitely think you should investigate that further and potentially, bring a claim, I mean, against your sister or certainly against the estate. I mean, something that would really force these other people who are don't seem to be doing what they're supposed to be doing to kind of put all of their cards on the table in front of the court.
Mm.
Ramona, you have another caller.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
Right.
We have another caller.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for listening.
All right.
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, caller. This is Ramona, the insurance guru.
Hi, I'm calling. My name is Latrinda, and I'm calling. I was listening at a few of your callers back, and one mentioned about the oldest sibling. So if something was to happen to someone's parents, and it's more than one child in the family, who becomes in charge or acquire I guess the state or what have you, if the parent does not have or has not submitted have a will as of yet.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think one that people have questions about, or I think people have lots of assumptions that it's always kind of the oldest sibling or something like that, and that's sometimes just the way that it works out. But that's not what the law requires. And so what typically happens is one or multiple people kind of step up in that role, and then if everybody else who may potentially be an heir, let's say there's four children and one or two siblings kind of step up to handle everything, because you can have more than one personal representative, you can have co-personal representatives, and the other siblings sign off on that, then everything's able to move forward. The court, though, won't authorize things to move forward if there's a dispute. If certain siblings disagree, then the court will intervene and then appoint whoever they see to be the most fit to do that. Which, as you know, I'd like to say I'm the oldest in my family. Hopefully, I'm the most fit, but maybe not. Right? Maybe it's not. That's not always the case, right? And age doesn't always equal ability. And so,
let me ask you this: under what, with regards to the criteria of determining who is the most fit, what do they use to try to determine that? Did we talk about that earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same things that I kind of brought up. If you were choosing somebody yourself, the court's going to kind of look through the same things. I mean, who has the most ability to do that? Is there somebody that seems to have present themselves as having, both the capability, and maybe that's their jurisdiction where they live, right? I mean, if this is a Baltimore City estate, and maybe the most competent person lives in Tampa, the court probably won't go in that direction. They would rather have somebody who's here closer and able to handle that business. They also probably look at the people who are most engaged, seem to be the ones that are filing the paperwork, that seem to be the ones that are trying to push this forward, because if there's one thing that I know about courts is they try to they want to, and I think it's best if they do as little as possible in the process, if people are able to handle kind of their own business. So if there seems to be somebody who's really active in pushing this forward and engaged with the Register of Wills and is the one that is filing the petitions and filing the paperwork, they're going to be much more likely to side with that person than the people who just seem to have an objection just because they don't like a sibling or something like that.
But I think that if your loved one is still here, the most effective way is to get everybody in the room and record the things that they want now. Even if it's a video recording or an audio recording, and then have it transcribed and signed off on everybody. I think that's a good idea if you can do that now. Even if somebody changes their name later, changes their mind later, it doesn't matter. This is what was decided now.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my parents to, do something similar to that, but it's just the fact that, I mean, they're somewhat old school, and they're saying, well, just divide everything up amongst each other. But I can see that's not going to happen.
No, it's a nightmare.
Your siblings.
Yep, it's a nightmare. And the thing is that somebody who says that they're okay with something today, there could be an entire different situation 10 years from now, and they take advantage or they decide that I deserve this because I did this, that, and the other. People's ideas of what should and should not happen change over time. And that's why it should reflect what the parents want and not what you want because of your current situation.
And having a will resolves a lot of this.
Yeah.
Having sitting down and a good attorney who's helping you prepare this will is going to talk through those things. I mean, you don't want to list, every item in the junk drawer in the kitchen, right? But you want to say, okay, my grandmother's wedding ring or the sport coat, and really kind of list those important things. Vehicles oftentimes are a big thing that gets specifically given. Usually it's a grandchild who just turned 16, and they might need this,
Right.
2000 Honda Civic or something like that to be a starter car. And then beyond that, I'm usually very clear and wills, if people can't agree on how stuff gets divided, or we're talking about the physical assets, that is supposed to be quote unquote divided equally or amongst the family members, I believe then fine. If you can't agree on it, we're going to sell it, and then we'll split the money evenly. And oftentimes that kind of puts people in a position where they decide, okay, well, I'd rather have somebody else have this clock or pocket watch than it just being sold. So that's typically how we kind of force people's hands in that regard, is having a very strong provision that what is not agreeably distributed amongst potential heirs, or amongst the siblings in this case, fine, we'll just sell it and we can divide the money, because that's very easy to split up very clearly and in dollars and cents.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you so much for calling. If you would like to have Mr. Attorney and Nick McDaniel's assistance, again, his phone numbers are 301-818-0405, and his cell is 443-340-7323. We're also going to list it on this posting on Facebook and on YouTube. So you can go to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page and get the telephone numbers. They'll be listed below. You can also find him at lewismcdaniels.com. And thank you so much for calling, ma'am.
Is that LEWIS or LOUIS?
LEWIS.
Okay. LEWIS. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
ma'am. So thank you so much, Mr. McDaniels, for being on. I think this was a very informative show. I'm glad we did it because we talk about the prep, but then we rarely talk about the things that happen afterwards.
You gotta go. I got commercials to run.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I want to thank you so much for being on. Hey, everybody, this is Ramona Jones McClain, your insurance guru. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next Thursday with more. If you want to call me, 443-660-7131. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon. All right. So I owe you some. Oh, all right. Wait a minute.